Organic food started as a hippie dream, and now it's a $50 billion business. But does it live up to the hype, or are we getting played? The organic movement started with great intentions: healthier, pesticide-free food and a better treatment of the environment. But as it's grown, it's become more complex. Big corporations have taken over, and some argue that large-scale organic farming doesn't affect the environment much differently than traditional farming. So is organic food actually better for us and the environment? Or is it an expensive trend that makes us feel good about ourselves? I'm Ken LaCorte. I try to look past the headlines and really understand issues, especially when so many sources seem to be spinning things, and that's what I found here. I went into this with an open mind. I want to be healthy, but I'm also skeptical when someone says, "Trust us, this one's better, now give me more money." And that $50 billion industry pays for a lot of studies and a lot of websites saying how great it is. So we'll look into what organic actually means, its complicated calculations on how it affects the environment, and then the real question: is it healthier? Are the benefits worth the costs? Okay, so what's organic food? Now, you'd think that's an easy question, but it's not. Organic labels are all over the place in the grocery store, but they're also on things you wouldn't expect, like vodka, or clothes, or organic mattresses. But what the heck does that actually mean? Most people think it means no pesticides, but that's absolutely not true. Organic farmers can and do use pesticides. They just have to be derived from natural sources. In fact, there are over 20 chemicals approved for organic use in the United States. And weirdly, some of those natural pesticides can be more toxic than synthetic ones, which have been created or altered in a lab. I mean, cyanide is a natural compound, but you wouldn't want to eat it. And the word organic means different things depending on where you live, because different countries play by different rules. In the United States, for something to be labeled organic, it's partially about excluding compounds, but it also focuses on production methods. Generally, that means no synthetic fertilizers, no GMOs, or any synthetic pesticides. Instead, organic farmers use things like crop rotation, or natural fertilizers, and those natural pesticides I discussed. Farmers also control pests with natural predators and traps, and weeds might be pulled by hand or controlled with mulch. And not all food labeled organic is completely organic either. If a label says organic in the US, it has to consist of at least 95% organic ingredients. If it says made with organic ingredients, it needs to be only up to 70% organic. Only when you see the words 100% organic does it actually mean that. The European Union rules are similar, but with a little bit stricter than the United States on labeling, and they also take animal welfare standards into account as well. Now, let's talk about what organic isn't. It doesn't necessarily mean small scale or local or anything like that. There are massive organic farms out there shipping produce all over the world. And we'll see that the line between organic and conventional isn't as clear-cut as you might think. Many conventional farmers use some organic methods like crop rotation, and some massive organic operations look a lot like conventional farms. Okay, so that's what organic actually means. So how does it impact our environment? Now, when I think of organic farming, I sometimes see pristine landscape with happy cows munching on green fields, but that's more in my head than reality. They may not look like that, but first, let's look at some of the environmental advantages. Organic farms tend to have better soil health, meaning more or actual organic living matter in the dirt itself. They can use less energy overall, and they can be better at storing carbon in the soil, so sometimes have lower greenhouse emissions. The reduced use of synthetic pesticides and the better soil structure can also mean that chemical runoff is less going into waterways. Now, as I said before, they can use organic pesticides, and some of those break down faster than synthetic ones. But others are worse, like copper sulfate. It's commonly used on organic apples and is actually more toxic to humans and wildlife than many synthetic alternatives. The idea that natural always means safer is just a myth that you need to get away from. Another factor that often gets ignored by organic supporters is the concept of land use. Organic farms need a lot more space to produce the same amount of food as conventional farms. On average, organic crop yields are about 20 to 25% lower than conventional ones. So what does this mean in practice? Well, more farmland means less natural habitat for wildlife. It also skews the issues we're discussing. So when studies show that organic farms use water more efficiently, you have to also factor in the yield drop to see which method is actually using less water per unit of food. And that all of these things can depend on what you're growing as well. And the same goes with greenhouse gas emissions. Once again, the results are mixed. A 2017 meta-analysis looked at over 700 agricultural production sources and found that organic systems have similar greenhouse emissions to conventional ones, in some cases higher because of the yield factor. And this is what I found time and time again. A lot of studies and claims, but few clear-cut answers because there are just so many overlapping factors. Like location. If your asparagus was flown or shipped from across the world, that affects its environmental impact as well. Shelf life does too. I saw studies on both sides of that debate, but if you end up throwing out food that spoils before it's eaten, that skews all of the environmental numbers as well. Now look, someone will undoubtedly link a study and accuse me of being a shill for big pesticide, but there are just no pat answers to these questions. And I hate to say it, but when it comes to health benefits, there's only a little bit more clarity. Because it's the biggest question of all. Is organic food healthier for us? Okay, so first up, nutritional content. Most people think organic produce has more vitamins and minerals, but that's just not true at all. Stanford University reviewed 237 studies. Their conclusion? Organic foods aren't noticeably more or less nutritious than conventional ones, with one exception. They had similar levels of vitamins, minerals, and other nutrients. And, again, some studies showed slightly higher vitamin C levels or omega-3, and other studies found no real difference. Antioxidants, though, are a different matter, with some studies showing organic food with 20 to 70% more. And that makes sense because plants use antioxidants as a sort of a natural pesticide when they have to work harder without synthetic help. But scientists are still debating exactly how they help humans and how much we really need. Regarding GMOs, the science is actually pretty clear. Some people freak out over them, but they've undergone more evaluation than any other group of plants consumed by humans. Groups from the FDA to the American Cancer Society say they're safe, as do the vast majority of scientists who report that over decades, there's been no documented occurrences of health issues coming from GMOs. So, this is the part where I have to make clear that you can take almost any sentence I've said in this entire video, and somewhere people are debating it. And often passionately. I'm doing my best to give you what I see as a mainstream scientific consensus, but you just never know. And sometimes the fringe voices turn out to be right. But out of every potential health benefit, the one we should pay the most attention to is the residual exposure to small amounts of pesticides. I mean, they kill bugs, so they're unlikely to be good for us. And organic food definitely has less. Agricultural workers have been known to have higher cancer and other health risks. So governments set strict exposure levels for pesticides in our food. And the real question is, do these small amounts actually harm us? And I know you're gonna hate this, but once again, the science is complicated. Studies looking at self-reported diets can show correlations between organic and health benefits, but the causality is still unknown. For instance, if you eat organic food, you're probably less likely to smoke or be sedentary. There's a lot more serious research that needs to be done before we really know the answers to these trace amounts of pesticides. So the bottom line on health, in terms of nutritional content, there's really no difference. To me, the biggest benefit is lower pesticide residues, which may or may not hurt us. Now, I know that's not a great answer.
What did we learn, Palmer?
I don't know, sir.
I don't fucking know either.
All of us have to guess a little bit. If you're a believer in better safe than sorry, eating organic is the way to go. It's hard to imagine microscopic amounts of pesticides actually helping our health, so the only real downside to organic food is cost. I mean, does it taste better? I can never tell the difference. But organic food is definitely a lot more expensive. That's understandable because it takes more labor. The regulatory process is expensive, and as we discuss, it uses more land. For me, I'm usually too cheap to buy organic, and studying up on this won't change that. If I were fighting a health problem like cancer or an autoimmune disease, that might change my mind, just in case. I care about what I eat, but I'm much more concerned about getting balanced food, and for me, that means not eating too many calories, since overeating and premature death go hand in hand. That's not a question at all. Scientists can't really point to people dying because of GMOs or pesticides, but they're confident that millions of people die every year because of obesity. We've seen that recently with early deaths of a number of fat activists, and some of those stories are heartbreaking. I got into that whole world, and to be honest, I got upset. Not at the overweight people who want to feel good about themselves, but about people who should know better. The media, doctors. They turned not shaming people into fat is healthy. I made this video on how that toxic ideology took root, and you might find it interesting. Hey, thanks for watching. I wish I had some clearer answers for you on this one, but maybe what we learned is that the world is a complicated place, and the answers aren't always straightforward. I hope you come back again.